Captain Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Taewa, staring at the impossible sight before him. His ship had traveled farther from Earth than any human vessel in history. They had crossed into a region of space where the stars looked different, where everything felt alien and new, and now, floating in the darkness ahead, was proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. The alien ship was beautiful in a way that made Jiwoo's chest tight. It curved and spiraled like a seashell, glowing with soft purple light. It was 3 times the size of the Taewa, but it moved with the grace of a dancer. Nothing humanity had built looked like that. Their ships were all angles and armor, built for function rather than beauty. Lieutenant Park Minji worked quickly at her station, her fingers moving across the controls. She had been monitoring the strange signals for hours, trying to make sense of them. Now her face showed excitement mixed with fear. "Captain, they're sending us a message. The computer is translating it now." The main screen flickered, and suddenly Jiwoo was looking at an alien face. It was slender and elegant, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and skin that shimmered like oil on water. The creature smiled, showing no teeth, and when it spoke, the translator turned its words into perfect Korean. "Greetings, travelers from the young world. I am Envoy Thalrus of the Velthran Concordat. We welcome you to civilized space." Jiwoo straightened his uniform and stepped forward. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "I am Captain Han Jiwoo of Earth. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge." Thalrus tilted his head in what might have been amusement. "How formal. How proper. Yes, you will do well here, I think. Tell me, Captain, does your species have experience with warfare?" The question caught Jiwoo off guard. Of all the things an alien might ask during first contact, he had not expected that. He glanced at Park, who looked equally confused. "Yes," he said carefully. "We have fought many wars throughout our history." "Excellent," Thalrus said, and his smile widened. "Then perhaps we can offer you an opportunity. A chance to prove your worth to the galactic community and earn considerable rewards. Would you accept an invitation to observe our current conflict?" Park leaned close to Jiwoo and whispered, "This could be a trap, sir." But Jiwoo saw something else. This was why they had come to the stars, wasn't it? To meet other civilizations. To learn. To find humanity's place among the cosmos. He took a breath and nodded. "We would be honored, Envoy Thalrus." 3 days later, the Taewa arrived at what Thalrus called a battle zone. Jiwoo had prepared himself for carnage, for the kind of desperate void combat that human war games and simulations had always predicted. What he saw instead made no sense at all. 2 fleets faced each other across a distance of several thousand kilometers. The Velthran ships, all curves and grace, floated on one side. Opposite them were the vessels of something called the Korthian Empire, built like crystals and glowing with red light. There had to be 40 ships total, enough firepower to glass a planet, but they were just sitting there. "Why aren't they fighting?" Park asked, voicing the question that everyone on the bridge was thinking. Thalrus, who had come aboard the Taewa as a guest, made a sound like wind chimes. It was laughter. "Fighting? My dear Lieutenant, the engagement has not yet begun. Both sides are still positioning their forces and declaring their intentions. The battle will commence at the agreed-upon time, naturally." "Agreed-upon time?" Jiwoo repeated. "You schedule your battles?" "Of course. How else would one conduct warfare properly?" Watch now. The Korthian commander is issuing his challenge." On the screen, one of the crystal ships broadcast a message. The translation came through crisp and clear. "War Master Krell of the Korthian Empire challenges the Velthran Concordat for control of mining rights in the Helion sector. We claim superior tactical position and demand your withdrawal. If you refuse, we shall engage according to the Codes of Honorable Warfare, subsection 47, paragraph 12. A Velthran ship responded immediately. "We acknowledge your challenge, War Master Krell. We refuse withdrawal and accept engagement terms. May honor guide both our fleets." Then, as Jiwoo watched in disbelief, both fleets began to move in what looked like a choreographed dance. Ships advanced in neat formations, their weapons charging with obvious visual displays. When the first shots were fired, each ship announced its target beforehand. Shields flared and absorbed the impacts. One Velthran ship took damage, and it simply backed away from the battle line while the others covered its retreat. "This isn't war," Park said quietly. "This is theater." Thalrus heard her and turned his 4 eyes in her direction. "Theater? No, Lieutenant. This is civilization. This is how advanced species resolve disputes. With honor, with rules, with respect for life. Tell me, how do humans conduct warfare?" Park looked at Jiwoo, who nodded for her to answer honestly. She took a breath. We try to win. By any means necessary. We use deception, surprise attacks, whatever gives us an advantage. War is survival for us. The envoy's expression changed to something that might have been pity. How primitive, how sad. But perhaps that is why you might be useful to us. Over the next several hours, Thalris explained the reality of galactic warfare. There were 412 specific rules that all civilized species followed in combat. Battles could only occur during designated time periods. Certain weapons were forbidden. Ships had to announce their attacks. There were mandatory rest periods. Civilian areas were absolutely off limits, even if military targets hid behind them. The goal was never to destroy the enemy, only to prove tactical superiority until one side acknowledged defeat. Jiwoo listened to it all and felt a growing sense of unreality. These aliens had turned war into a game. They had stripped it of everything that made it terrible and necessary and desperate. They fought because it was expected, not because their survival demanded it. Why do you fight at all? He finally asked. If you have all these rules, why not just negotiate without combat? Thalris made that wind chime laugh again. Because, Captain, some disputes require demonstration of capability. The Korthians claim these mining sectors. We claim them as well. Rather than let the dispute fester, we prove our strength through controlled conflict. In 3 or 4 engagements, one side will clearly have the advantage and the other will concede. Minimal casualties, maximum efficiency. And you want to hire humans as mercenaries in these conflicts? Precisely. You are new, unknown. Your presence might give us a psychological advantage, and in return you gain access to galactic trade, technology, and recognition. You would no longer be an isolated species but a valued contributor to civilized society. Jiwoo looked at his crew. They had come to the stars hoping to find their place among the cosmos. This was not what anyone had expected, but it was an opportunity. Earth needed allies. Humanity needed to prove it belonged out here among the stars. We accept, he said. Humanity will fight for the Velthran Concordat. Thalris clapped his long fingers together in apparent delight. Wonderful! I will arrange for your forces to join our next engagement. Oh, and Captain, you will need to study the codes of honorable warfare. All 412 rules. You must memorize them completely before you engage in combat. Park groaned softly, but Jiwoo just nodded. They had made their choice. Now they would see where it led. As the Tewa prepared to receive the massive data file containing the war codes, Jiwoo stared out at the distant fleet still performing their careful, polite battle. Something about all of this felt wrong. But humanity had always adapted. They would learn these rules, play by them, and prove themselves worthy. What could possibly go wrong? Commander Kwon Jae-hyun had fought in 3 different wars before humanity reached the stars. He had seen combat in jungles, deserts, and frozen mountains. He had led soldiers through situations where one mistake meant death. He thought he understood war in all its forms. But standing on the bridge of the human warship Busan, watching the so-called battle unfold before him, he felt like he was losing his mind. The Korthian fleet had arrived exactly on schedule, at the time both sides had agreed upon. They had announced their intention to contest the Helion Gate, a strategic point that controlled access to 3 different star systems. The Velthran fleet with its human allies had acknowledged the challenge. Then both sides had spent an hour positioning themselves in what the aliens called proper formation. This is insane, muttered Sergeant Choi Sohee from her station. She was the best combat medic Jae-hyun had ever worked with, someone who had saved dozens of lives under fire. Now she sat at a medical monitoring station with nothing to do. They're just floating there. Jae-hyun checked his tactical display again. The human ships were integrated into the Velthran fleet, spread out among the alien vessels. The Taehwa Captain Han's ship was at the center. 3 smaller human destroyers, including the Busan, protected the flanks. All of them had been briefed extensively on the rules they must follow. Rule 73. Announce your target before firing. Rule 104. Allow disabled ships to withdraw without pursuit. Rule 206. Observe the sanctity of rescue operations. The list went on, each rule more bizarre than the last. Engagement begins in 5 minutes, announced a Velthran coordinator over the communication channel. All vessels confirm readiness and rule compliance. One by one, ships from both fleets confirmed. When it came to the human vessels, Jae-hyun heard Captain Han's voice steady and professional. Human contingent confirms readiness and will honor all protocols. The battle began with all the spontaneity of a scheduled meeting. A Korthian ship announced it would fire on a Velthran cruiser. The Velthran ship acknowledged and raised its shields. The shot came. Brilliant red energy that splashed against the barrier. The Velthran ship returned fire, announcing its intentions first. The dance continued, careful and controlled. Jaehyun watched a Korthian destroyer take 3 direct hits. Its shields failed and damage bloomed along its crystal hull. Immediately, the ship broadcast a withdrawal signal. The Velthran ships near it simply stopped firing and let it drift away. A rescue vessel, marked with neutral symbols, moved in to collect the crew. "They're letting them go," so he said, disbelief thick in her voice. "The enemy is crippled right there, and they're just letting them escape." "It's the rules," Jaehyun said, but his hands clenched into fists. Every instinct he had screamed that this was wrong. In real war, you pressed advantages. You struck when the enemy was weak. You did whatever it took to survive and win. The battle continued for another 2 hours. It followed a rhythm, almost musical in its predictability. Ships announced attacks, defenders acknowledged, shots were fired, damage was assessed. When a vessel was disabled, it withdrew. When the scheduled rest period arrived, both fleets simply stopped shooting and maintained position. During the rest period, Captain Han called a conference with all human commanders. His face on the screen looked tired. "I know what you're all thinking. I'm thinking it too. But we gave our word. We will follow their rules." "Until when?" asked Commander Park from the HFY. "Sir, we could end this battle in 10 minutes if we fought properly." "Properly?" Han's expression hardened. "These are our allies, Park. This is their way. We adapt, but adaptation became harder as the battle resumed." The Busan took fire from a Korthian cruiser, the shots announced well in advance. Jaehyun's crew followed procedure, raised shields, absorbed the damage. They returned fire, announcing their target, watching as the enemy calmly prepared to receive their attack. It felt like fighting with both hands tied behind his back. Then everything changed. A Korthian battleship, larger than anything else in the engagement, targeted the HFY. The announcement came clear. 3 massive energy cannons fired in sequence. The HFY's shields held for the first 2 shots but collapsed under the third. The final blast tore through the ship's port side, ripping open decks and venting atmosphere. "HFY is critically damaged," came the report over the fleet channel. Initiating withdrawal protocol. Jaehyun's tactical display showed the disaster. The HFY was crippled, its engines failing, life support compromised in 3 sections. Captain Han would have to surrender, withdraw, accept defeat. The battle would continue without humanity's flagship. But then Park's voice came over the command channel, tight with controlled anger. "Captain, I'm reading a power buildup in our starboard batteries. We can still fight." "Negative," Han replied. "We're disabled. The rules state we must withdraw." "The rules state a ship must withdraw when it can no longer effectively engage," Park said. And Jaehyun could hear the careful choice of words. "Sir, we can still engage. We just need to interpret effectively in our own terms." There was a long pause. Jaehyun held his breath. He knew what Park was suggesting. She had found a loophole, a way to twist the rules without breaking them outright. It was the kind of tactical thinking that won real wars. Captain Han's voice, when it came, was quiet. "All human vessels, this is Han. We are reinterpreting our engagement parameters. Follow the HFY's lead." The HFY, trailing debris and venting air, did not withdraw. Instead, it rotated on its maneuvering thrusters, bringing its intact weapons to bear. But it did not announce its target. It did not wait for acknowledgement. During what should have been a recovery period, it fired everything it had at the Korthian battleship that had crippled it. The aliens never saw it coming. Their shields were lowered, as was proper during recovery periods. The HFY's weapons, human railguns that fired solid metal at relativistic speeds, tore through the battleship's hull like paper. Secondary explosions rippled along its length. For a moment, silence filled the communication channels. Then chaos erupted. "Violation! Violation!" the Korthian War Master screamed. "They attack during rest period. They attack without announcement." But Jaehyun was already moving. If they were going to break the facade, they might as well do it properly. "All human ships, weapons free. Real combat protocols. Show them how we fight." The 3 human destroyers had been holding back for hours, following rules that made no tactical sense. Now they unleashed everything. They used electronic warfare to blind enemy sensors. They fired without warning, targeting the most dangerous ships first. They coordinated their attacks in ways the aliens had never seen, concentrating fire to overwhelm shields before the enemy could react. So he hacked into the Korthian communication network and broadcast false retreat orders. Two of their ships actually turned away, confused by the commands. Jaehyun had the Busan perform a maneuver that looked like a withdrawal, but was actually a flanking attack. They hit a Korthian cruiser from behind, an angle the aliens never defended because the rules said you always faced your enemy. In 6 minutes, the human ships had disabled or destroyed 7 Korthian vessels. The enemy fleet was in complete disarray, unable to respond to tactics they had never encountered. Ships that should have announced their attacks simply fired. Vessels that should have withdrawn instead pressed attacks. Every rule of civilized warfare was being ignored or twisted beyond recognition. The Velthran ships just floated there, motionless as if unable to process what they were seeing. War Master Krell's voice boomed across all channels. "Cease fire! Cease fire! This is barbarism! This is not war, this is slaughter! We surrender! We surrender the field!" Jaehyun expected to feel triumph. Instead, he felt sick. They had won, yes, but as his tactical display showed the scattered Korthian fleet, some ships trailing debris, others trying to rescue their wounded, he saw something else. Fear. The Velthran coordinator finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Human vessels, you will power down all weapons immediately. You will not fire again. What have you done?" Captain Han responded, and for the first time, Jaehyun heard uncertainty in his commander's voice. "We won the battle. We secured the Helion Gate. You destroyed the concept of honorable warfare," the coordinator said. "You have shown us something terrible. Stand by for further orders." The human ships hung in space, surrounded by allies who now looked at them with the same fear as their enemies. Jaehyun looked around his bridge. His crew were cheering, celebrating their victory. But he could not join them. He had seen the tactical displays from the Velthran and Korthian ships. He had seen how their weapons had been designed, their shields configured, their tactics developed. Everything about their military technology was built around their rules. They were not weak. They had simply never needed to be strong. Not in the way humanity understood strength. So he stopped cheering and looked at him. "Sir, did we do something wrong?" Jaehyun did not know how to answer. They had followed the letter of the rules, even if they had violated the spirit. They had won a battle decisively, with minimal human casualties. By any military standard, they had performed perfectly. Ambassador Lee Yuna had represented Earth in many difficult negotiations. She had faced down corporate executives, military leaders, and stubborn politicians, but she had never stood before anything like the Galactic Council. The chamber was vast, carved from a single massive crystal that somehow existed in multiple dimensions at once. Representatives from 40 different species sat in a circle that seemed to curve away into infinity. At the center, on a platform that floated without any visible support, stood the High Arbiter Velmora. Velmora was old. Her species, the Aniri, lived for thousands of years, and she had presided over the council for longer than human civilization had existed. Her form was difficult to look at directly, shifting between states of matter as if she could not quite decide whether to be solid, liquid, or energy. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once. "We convene this emergency session to address the actions of the species called humanity, specifically their conduct during the Battle of Helion Gate." Velmora's form solidified enough to gesture toward where Lee stood with Captain Han Jiwoo beside her. "You stand accused of violating 87 separate provisions of the Codes of Honorable Warfare. How do you answer?" Lee had prepared for this moment during the 3-day journey to the council station. She had studied every word of the charges, consulted with human lawyers and military experts, and crafted her defense carefully. She stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "High Arbiter, honored council members, humanity acknowledges that our actions were unexpected. However, we categorically deny any actual violation of the written codes." A ripple of shock went through the chamber. A Korthian representative, his crystalline body still showing cracks from the battle, stood abruptly. "Lies, they attacked during rest periods. They fired without announcement. They used deception and treachery." Lee turned to face him directly. "We did fire during what you call rest periods. But the code, Section 47, Paragraph 9, states that rest periods are recommended for crew welfare. Recommended, not mandatory. We chose not to follow that recommendation." She pulled up a holographic display of the actual code text. As for announcement, Section 63 requires hostile intent to be declared before engagement. We declared hostile intent when we joined the battle. Nothing in the code requires repeated announcements for each individual attack. War Master Krell, who had commanded the Korthian fleet, slammed his appendage against his seat. You twist the words. You ignore the spirit of the law. The spirit of whose law? Lee asked quietly. These are your traditions, your customs, your way of war. We are new to the galaxy. We interpreted the written rules as we found them. If there were unwritten expectations, how were we supposed to know them? Velmora raised a hand and silence fell instantly. A fair point, Ambassador Lee. However, ignorance is not innocence. Your species was briefed on our ways. You were shown how civilized warfare is conducted. And we observed, Lee said. We watched your forces exchange fire like dancers in a performance. We saw ships withdraw when damaged, enemies allowed to escape, battles that seemed designed to minimize actual harm. But respectfully, High Arbiter, we were never told that efficiency was forbidden. Captain Han stepped forward to stand beside Lee. She had not planned for him to speak, but she did not stop him. He looked up at Velmora with steady eyes. May I address the council? He asked. Velmora considered, then nodded. Speak, Captain. Han looked around at the assembled aliens. You call it war, but you treat it like a game. A serious game, yes, with rules and honor and consequences, but still a game. For humanity, war has never been a game. It has always meant survival or extinction. A holographic display activated above Han's head, showing images from Earth's history. Battlefields covered with bodies, cities reduced to rubble, mushroom clouds rising over distant horizons. This is what war means to us. Total conflict. Survival at any cost. We have fought ourselves for thousands of years. We have nearly destroyed our own species more than once. Every human alive today exists because our ancestors were willing to do whatever it took to survive. The images changed, showing more recent conflicts. Soldiers fighting in brutal conditions. Civilians fleeing destroyed homes. Medics working desperately to save the wounded. We hate war, Han said, and his voice cracked slightly. We hate what it does to us, what it costs us. But we are very, very good at it. Because we have had to be. A Velthran counselor stood, the same species as Envoy Thalris. You speak as if this justifies your barbarism. It does not. It only proves that humanity is too dangerous to be trusted with the responsibilities of warfare. Dangerous? Han laughed, but there was no humor in it. You hired us because you thought we would be useful. You wanted mercenaries who might give you an advantage. You just never expected we would be this effective. Lee took over again, her diplomatic instincts warning her that Han was getting too emotional. The Council invited humanity to participate in galactic affairs. You offered us a chance to prove ourselves. We did exactly that. If you are unhappy with the results, perhaps you should examine your own expectations. Velmora's form shifted, becoming more solid. Ambassador, let me be direct. Your species approaches warfare with an intensity that terrifies us. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, we have never seen tactics like yours. The Korthian fleet, which has won hundreds of honorable engagements, was defeated in minutes, not because your technology is superior, but because your mindset is fundamentally different. Yes, Lee said simply, it is different. But different does not mean wrong, does it not? A new voice spoke, and Lee turned to see a species she did not recognize. The being was tall and thin, with skin like flowing water. I am Counselor Nex of the Aquari Unity. My people have studied your world's history, Ambassador Lee. We have examined your wars, your weapons, your warrior cultures, and we are horrified. Nex activated another display, this one showing statistics. In your most recent global conflict, you killed over 70 million of your own kind. You developed weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. You created doctrines of mutually assured destruction. You built your entire civilization on the edge of self-annihilation. Yes, Lee said, and she felt something hard settle in her chest. We did all of that, and then we chose to stop. We chose peace. We chose to reach for the stars instead of each other's throats. That choice, Counselor Nex, is what defines us. Not our capacity for violence, but our decision to overcome it. Pretty words, Krell said. But at Helion Gate, you showed us what you truly are. Savages dressed in civilized clothes. Han turned to face the Korthian. We won. We saved Velthran lives by ending the battle quickly. How many of your own crew would have died if the battle had continued for days following your rules? How much blood was actually spared by our efficiency? The chamber fell silent. It was a question no one seemed ready to answer. Velmora spoke again, and her voice carried the weight of ages. Here is the truth as I see it. Humanity did not technically violate our written laws, but they violated every principle those laws were built upon. The codes of honorable warfare were created to limit destruction, to preserve life, to maintain civilization even in conflict. Your species treats these codes as obstacles to overcome rather than ideals to uphold. Because they are not our ideals, Lee said. You have had peace for so long that you have forgotten what real war looks like. You play at conflict because you can afford to. Humanity cannot afford that luxury. We remember what it means when war becomes total, and yes, that makes us dangerous. But it also makes us honest. Velmora was quiet for a long moment. The entire council waited. Finally she spoke. The council will deliberate. You will wait for our judgment. The next 6 hours were the longest of Lee's life. She and Han were confined to a waiting chamber, unable to communicate with Earth or their fleet. They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they were finally summoned back, Lee knew from Velmora's expression that the news was not good. The Galactic Council has reached its decision, Velmora announced. Humanity is hereby banned from participating in any military conflict involving member species of this council. You are designated as protected observers. You may trade with us, communicate with us, even live among us, but you will not fight for us or against us. Your approach to warfare is fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. Lee felt the words like a physical blow. You are quarantining us? Treating us like a disease? We are protecting everyone, Velmora said. And for the first time, Lee heard something like sadness in her voice. Including you. Your species has a gift for war that borders on pathological. Perhaps in time you will evolve past it. Until then, you are too dangerous to integrate into our military affairs. This is not justice, Han said. This is fear. Yes, Velmora agreed. It is fear. Fear of what you represent. Fear of what you might do if given the chance. Fear of what we might become if we learn to fight as you do. Perhaps that makes us cowards, but it also keeps us civilized. The judgment was final. There would be no appeal. Lee and Han were escorted from the council chamber, past representatives who would not meet their eyes. As their ship prepared to depart, Lee looked back at the massive station that housed the council. 15 years had passed since the council had banned humanity from galactic warfare. Admiral Song Hyunwoo, who had been a young captain during those days, now commanded the entire Earth Defense Force. He stood in his office overlooking the shipyards of Luna Station, watching the construction of humanity's newest warship. The vessel was a monster, built with technology humanity had developed independently after being isolated from galactic military affairs. The ban had stung at first. Earth had felt rejected, cast out from galactic society. But humanity had done what it always did when faced with a challenge. It adapted. It grew stronger. If the galaxy would not let humans fight their wars, then humans would build the strength to defend themselves. Dr. Kim Nari entered his office without knocking. She was the head of Earth's Xenobiological Monitoring Program, responsible for tracking threats from deep space. The look on her face made Hyunwoo's stomach tighten. We have a problem, she said, pulling up a holographic display. A big one. The display showed the edge of known space far beyond even the farthest galactic colonies. Something was moving there. No, not moving, swarming. The sensors showed thousands of contacts, maybe tens of thousands, all moving in the same direction. Toward inhabited space, what am I looking at? Hyunwoo asked. We are calling it the Devourer Swarm, Nari said. Our deep space probes detected them 3 weeks ago. They are organic ships, Admiral. Living vessels that consume everything in their path. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They just eat and move on. Hyunwoo zoomed in on the sensor data. The things were massive, each one the size of a city. They moved like insects, coordinating perfectly without any visible command structure. Where did they come from? Outside the galaxy. Dark space. Somewhere we have never looked before. Nari's hands shook slightly as she manipulated the display. Admiral, they have already hit the outer colonies. The Velthran listening post at Sigma 7, the Korthian mining operation at Redshift Station. Both are gone. Completely consumed. No survivors. Have you sent this to the Council? 3 weeks ago. They are aware. Nari's expression was grim. They are also dying. Their fleets are engaging the swarm according to their rules. It is not going well. Over the next days, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The swarm did not follow the codes of honorable warfare. When Veltran ships announced their targets, the swarm ignored them and attacked from unexpected angles. When damaged ships tried to withdraw, the swarm pursued and destroyed them. When civilized fleets paused for rest periods, the swarm pressed its advantage mercilessly. The aliens were fighting by rules that their enemy did not know existed, and they were being slaughtered. Hyunwoo watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The Korthian Imperial fleet, which had fought hundreds of successful engagements, was annihilated in 6 hours. The Velthran Concordat's finest battle group lasted barely longer. Worlds that had known peace for millennia were suddenly under attack by an enemy that existed only to consume. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. They debated tactics, studied the swarm, searched desperately for a way to negotiate. But the swarm was not interested in negotiation. It was a force of nature as unstoppable as a hurricane and just as uncaring. Nari showed Hyunwoo another report. The swarm is adapting. It learns from each battle. The tactics that worked initially are becoming less effective. The more the galactic fleets fight it, the stronger it gets. What are the casualty estimates? Nari's face went pale. Billions. Maybe trillions if it is not stopped. The swarm is moving toward the core worlds. In 3 months it will reach the council station itself. Hyunwoo looked out at the shipyards again. Earth's fleet was powerful, built with all the lessons humanity had learned from millennia of warfare. But it was designed to defend human space, not save the galaxy. What does Earth Command say? They say it is not our problem. The Council banned us from their wars. Let them handle it themselves. And when the swarm finishes with them, when it turns toward Earth, then we fight, Nari said simply. But not before. Not for people who called us barbarians and cast us out. Hyunwoo understood the anger. He felt it himself. But he also remembered why he had joined the military in the first place. Not to seek revenge or nurse grudges. To protect people. Any people. That night a message arrived on a secure channel. It was from High Arbiter Velamora herself. Sent directly to Hyunwoo's personal terminal. The message was brief. Admiral Song, we need help. The galaxy is dying. We were wrong to ban your species. We see that now. But pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Will humanity help us? Hyunwoo stared at the message for a long time. Then he forwarded it to Earth Command, to the President, to the Security Council. He added his own recommendation. We should help them. Not because we owe them anything, not because they deserve it, but because it is the right thing to do. The debate that followed was fierce. Many humans wanted to let the aliens face the consequences of their own arrogance. Others argued that helping would only prove the Council was right to fear humanity. But in the end, Ambassador Lee Yuna, now old but still sharp, made the deciding argument. 15 years ago, they rejected us for being too good at war. Now they need exactly that skill to survive. If we turn our backs on them, we prove we are the monsters they feared. If we help them, we prove we are better than their worst assumptions. The choice defines who we are. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would send its fleet to aid the galactic defense. Hyunwoo stood before his assembled officers, looking at the faces of men and women who had trained their entire careers for a war they were forbidden to fight. The Council has requested our assistance against the Devourer swarm. Earth Command has agreed. We deploy in 72 hours. Commander Kwon Jae-hyun, now a general and Hyunwoo's second-in-command, spoke up. Do they understand what they are asking? Do they understand that we will fight this war our way? They do, Hyunwoo said. Velmora was very clear. They need us to do what we do best. They need us to treat this like a real war, because it is. Captain Shin Dongwoo, commander of the flagship Soul's Fury, asked the question everyone was thinking. And after we save them? After we prove that our way of war is the only thing that can stop this threat? What then? Hyunwoo had no answer for that. The future beyond the immediate crisis was uncertain, but the present was clear. The galaxy was being devoured, and only humanity had the experience to stop it. The Earth Defense Force mobilized with a speed that shocked the galactic observers who monitored them. Within 72 hours, a fleet of 300 warships was ready to deploy. They were not the largest ships in space, nor did they have the most advanced technology. But every vessel was designed by people who understood that war was not a game. As the fleet prepared to jump to the front lines, Hyunwoo received one more message. This one was from Lee Yuna. They called us barbarians because we understand what they have forgotten. War is hell. It is not honorable or civilized. It is brutal and terrible and necessary. Show them, Admiral. Show them what we are willing to do to protect life, even the lives of those who rejected us. Hyunwoo read the message twice, then deleted it. He walked onto the bridge of the Soul's Fury and took his seat in the command chair. Around him, his crew worked efficiently, their movements practiced and precise. They were ready. All ships report ready for jump, Dongwoo said. Hyunwoo took a breath. Somewhere at the edge of known space, the swarm was consuming worlds. Somewhere in the core systems, alien species were dying following rules that their enemy did not respect. And somewhere in between, humanity was about to remind the galaxy what it meant to fight for survival. Engage jump drives, he ordered. Take us to war. The fleet vanished in bursts of twisted space-time, heading toward the largest battle humanity had ever fought. Heading toward an enemy that did not negotiate, did not surrender, and did not care about the rules of civilized warfare. For the first time in galactic history, the swarm was about to face an opponent just as ruthless, just as determined, and far more creative in the application of violence. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had been banned from its wars. And perhaps if they survived, they would finally understand that sometimes barbarism was the price of survival. The human fleet emerged from jump space at the threshold gate, the last major choke point before the galaxy's core worlds. Admiral Song Hyunwoo's tactical display immediately lit up with contact warnings. The Devourer swarm was everywhere, thousands of organic ships that looked like massive insects made of living metal and flesh. Beyond them, scattered and broken, were the remnants of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Velthran ships drifted without power. Korthian vessels tumbled through space, their crystalline hulls cracked and leaking atmosphere, and still they tried to fight by their rules, announcing their attacks to an enemy that only consumed. "Sir, we are receiving a communication from High Arbiter Velmora," reported the communication officer. Velmora's image appeared on the main screen. She looked exhausted, her form flickering unstably. "Admiral Song, thank you for coming. We have lost 60% of our forces. The swarm will breach the threshold in hours. We need coordination. We need to establish proper battle protocols with your fleet." Hyunwoo shook his head. "With respect, High Arbiter, there will be no protocols. No announcements, no rest periods, no honorable combat. We fight to destroy the enemy completely. That is the only protocol." Velmora was silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Do what you must." Hyunwoo turned to his fleet. "All ships engage at will. Target priority is the largest concentrations. Use everything we have." The human fleet did not announce its attacks. It simply struck. Captain Shin Dongwoo commanded the Soul's Fury into the heart of the swarm formation, weapons firing continuously. The ship's railguns, firing solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed, tore through swarm vessels that had never encountered purely kinetic weapons. Their organic armor, designed to absorb energy weapons, shattered under the physical impacts. "Deploy the nanoweapon packages," Hyunwoo ordered. Across the human fleet, missiles launched. They were not explosive warheads. Instead, they carried clouds of microscopic machines designed by human engineers who understood biological warfare. The nanomachines infected the swarm vessels, spreading like a plague, breaking down organic material at the molecular level. The swarm tried to adapt. Vessels that had been damaged began to regenerate, but the nanomachines mutated faster than the swarm could counter them. It was evolution at artificial speed, a war of biology that humanity had learned to fight in their own laboratories and battlefields. But the swarm was learning too. Some vessels developed immunity to the nano-weapons. Others changed their tactics, swarming individual human ships in overwhelming numbers. The destroyer Gwangju was covered in swarm fighters, their organic weapons burning through its armor. The ship's captain made a decision that the aliens would never have considered. All hands abandoned ship, set reactor to overload. The crew evacuated in escape pods while the Gwangju accelerated toward the largest swarm cluster. When the reactor exploded, it took out 17 swarm vessels in a blast of nuclear fire. The aliens watching on their sensors were horrified. The human fleet simply noted the tactic and prepared to repeat it if necessary. General Kwon Jae-hyun commanded the ground forces, deployed to defend stations that the swarm had boarded. The fighting was brutal, Close-quarters combat in corridors and chambers where honorable warfare meant nothing. The swarm creatures were fast and savage, but Jae-hyun's soldiers had trained for exactly this kind of fighting. They used flamethrowers in enclosed spaces, burning the organic matter that made up the swarm creatures. They collapsed corridors behind them, trapping the enemy in sections that were then vented to space. They fought dirty, using every advantage of terrain and technology. Sergeant Choi So-hee, now a major and field surgeon, worked in conditions that would have broken most medical professionals. She performed surgery in zero gravity while the station shook from weapons fire. She used alien medical technology in ways its creators had never intended, combining it with human battlefield medicine to save lives that should have been lost. "We are holding the medical bay," she reported to Jae-hyun, "but barely. We need reinforcements." "Negative. No reinforcements available. Hold as long as you can, then fall back to secondary positions." So-hee looked at the wounded around her. Humans and aliens both, bleeding and dying together. "Sir, if we fall back, these patients die." "Then you have a choice to make, Major." So-hee looked at her medical team, then at the blast doors that held back the swarm. She made her decision. "Defensive positions. We hold here. No one gets through to these patients." Her team, armed with whatever weapons they could find, prepared to defend the medical bay. They were doctors and medics, not soldiers. But they fought like soldiers anyway because the lives behind them depended on it. The battle at Threshold Gate lasted 18 hours. It was nothing like the careful, choreographed conflicts the galaxy was used to. It was chaos and carnage, desperation and determination. Human ships used tactics that made the alien observers sick with horror. They rammed swarm vessels when they ran out of ammunition. They used nuclear weapons in close proximity to their own forces. They deployed chemical agents, biological weapons, cyber attacks, and psychological warfare. But they were winning. The swarm, for all its adaptability, had never faced an enemy that matched its ruthlessness. It had consumed civilizations that fought with honor and restraint. Humanity fought with neither. Every time the swarm adapted to a human tactic, the humans simply changed tactics. Every time it learned to counter a weapon, the humans deployed something new. Hyun-woo watched his tactical display and saw the pattern emerging. The swarm was not just adapting to human tactics. It was learning them, incorporating them, becoming more like the humans it fought, and that gave him an idea. Scan the swarm formations. Look for a central coordination node, something that controls or influences the others. His tactical officer worked quickly.
"Sir, there is a large vessel at the center of their formation."
"It is different from the others. More complex, possibly a hive mind or queen analog." "That is our target," Hyun-woo said, "but we cannot reach it through normal assault. The swarm will protect it too heavily." He thought for a moment, then smiled without humor. "We need to make them think we are retreating. Make them chase us." The human fleet began a fighting withdrawal, appearing to flee from the swarm. The alien vessels had done the same thing countless times, retreating when damaged. But the humans were not damaged. They were baiting a trap. The swarm took the bait. Its vessels surged forward, pursuing what they thought was a broken enemy. They extended their formation, spreading out to chase multiple human ships, and in doing so, they exposed their center. "Now," Hyun-woo ordered. Half the human fleet reversed course, weapons hot. The other half had never actually retreated. They had circled around using the debris of destroyed ships as cover. Now they struck from both sides, converging on the central swarm vessel. The swarm tried to pull back, to protect its core, but human ships blocked their path, sacrificing themselves to keep the trap closed. The Soul's Fury led the final assault, all weapons firing at the massive central vessel. "Sir, we are not penetrating its armor," Dongwoo reported. "Then we go through it," Hyun-woo said. "Ram the target." "Full speed." Dongwoo stared at him. "Sir, that will destroy us." "Most of the crew can evacuate first." "To it." The Soul's Fury's crew abandoned ship in a fleet of escape pods protected by other human vessels. Only Hyun-woo and a skeleton crew remained on the bridge. The ship accelerated to maximum speed, directly at the swarm's heart. At the last moment, Hyun-woo activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. The Soul's Fury hit the central swarm vessel like a spear, penetrating deep into its core before exploding in a blast that tore the massive creature apart from the inside. The effect on the swarm was immediate. Without their central coordinator, the individual vessels became confused, disorganized. They began attacking each other. their coordination completely broken. The human fleet and the remnants of the galactic forces finished them off methodically. When it was over, the threshold gate was secure. The swarm was not destroyed completely, but its main force was shattered. It would be months or years before it could threaten the galaxy again, if ever. Hyunwoo sat in an escape pod, watching the debris field that had been his flagship. Around him, other pods drifted, carrying the survivors. The cost had been terrible. 40% of the human fleet was destroyed or critically damaged. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Dozens of stations had been lost despite their defense. But the galaxy was saved. A communication came through. It was Velmora, her form more stable now. Admiral Song, I witnessed everything. I watched your fleet fight with a brutality I did not think possible from a civilized species. I watched you sacrifice ships, use forbidden weapons, employ tactics that violated every principle we hold dear. And I watched you save us all. Hyunwoo was too tired to feel triumph. We did what was necessary. Yes, you did. And in doing so, you showed us something we had forgotten. Sometimes civilization is a luxury that survival cannot afford. Velmora paused. The Council wishes to offer a formal apology. We were wrong to ban humanity from our affairs. We were wrong to call you barbaric. Will you accept our apology?